Hello, I'm Whalley. Welcome to Lenscraft. Today I'm responding to a frequently requested topic. Can I explain how to use the PhotoLab local adjustments? To do this, I'm using an image I shot at the weekend with my Sony RX10. This is a first generation RX10 camera which I bought back in 2013. It's still a great camera and ideal for shooting landscapes when you're out walking. If you look over at the metadata panel, you can see that PhotoLab has recognised the camera and the lens. When I check the installed DxO modules, I can see that I have the correct RAW module installed. This is important if you want to achieve the best results from PhotoLab. Let's compare the image on screen to the uncorrected view. You can see the difference the lens correction's making. The vignette correction also uses the lens module. With this image, I think the vignette correction removes something, so I'm actually going to disable it. I've also turned off the smart lighting. I don't like the effect this is having on the image, and I think it's much better without it. Checking the effect of clear view module though, you can see how effective this is at removing the mist from the scene. Whilst the default adjustment's too strong, I do like the effect on the trees and will make use of that with the local adjustments. Now I'm not going to change any more of the adjustments. They're all at the default and I want to keep them like that because I want to focus this video on using local adjustments. To make or change a local adjustment in PhotoLab, we need to activate the local adjustment module. You can do this by clicking the button at the top of the screen. You then see a message telling you that you're making local adjustments. There's also a close and reset button at the bottom of the screen along with some mask controls. To add a new local adjustment, right-click anywhere on the image. This displays the tool selector where you can pick the tool or feature you want to use. There's really only three types of tool that we can work with to make selections in PhotoLab. First, we have the gradient tool. This is best used for making large selections that run to the edge of the frame. We then have control points, which makes circular selections. This is best for creating larger selections anywhere inside the frame. It's also great for creating natural blending adjustments. Finally, we have the brush tools, where you can paint your selection onto the image. This is good for small or large selections that have an irregular shape. You'll also see that there are two versions of the selection tool. We have the regular brush and also an auto mask option. The auto mask option selects automatically the areas based on what you're painting over. We then have some other tools to help you, such as the eraser tool. We can use this to remove areas of the selections that we make. If we go wrong whilst creating our selections on masks, we can use the reset option to start over again. Finally, there's an option to add a new mask. Each time we draw a new selection, we should add a new mask for that selection. The masks act like layers and we can use them to build up complex selections and help blend our effects overall into the image. I'll show you this shortly when we're drawing the masks, as not all of the tools create masks automatically. One final point that's worth mentioning is the help option in the centre. This turns on the help message, which can then be useful if you're not familiar with the tool you're trying to use. I'm now going to make my first selection of the reflections in the water. Because this is a rectangular area that runs off the edge of the frame, I'm going to use the graduated filter. To make the selection, find the point where you want the selection to end. Now you can click and draw. Continue to hold down your mouse as you drag and draw the gradient. When you release the mouse button, the gradient ends. You can now move the selection around by clicking and dragging this point. If you click and drag the smaller point, you can change the direction as well as the size of the gradient. Each time I click and drag, I'm going to draw a new gradient. These then appear over on the right side of the screen in the Local Adjustments panel. This was a new feature introduced in PhotoLab 3, so you may not see it in your version. Notice how each selection that I made has its own mask in this list. Earlier I mentioned there's a reset button on the selection tool. If I right click on the image, you can see it. Be careful if you decide to use this, as it deletes all the selections you've made, not just the ones that you're working on. If you want to delete a single selection, use the dustbin icon over here. Let's go back to selecting and adjusting the reflection. To do this, I'll apply the clear view adjustment. Then I'll increase the colours with the saturation and vibrancy sliders. If I use the compare button, you can see the difference this has made. But look at the reflection of the waterfall over on the left. This is now far too clear when you consider the waterfall is more distant and higher than the trees. It should be shrouded in mist. We can fix this by using the Erase Brush tool to remove part of the selection in that area of the lake. To do this, I'm going to use a low flow and opacity setting together with a high feather. That allows me to make multiple brush strokes carefully. Notice how this has helped to blend the correction and makes it much more believable. Next, I'm going to use a control point to select the trees along the edge of the reservoir. I'll start by adding a single control point. If I use the Show Mask option at the bottom of the screen, I can see what's being selected. The light areas show me what's being selected by the control point. Notice the software's automatically blending the selection into the areas surrounding it. The selection's determined by the area that's beneath the centre of the control point. As you move the control point, it changes the selection. When the selection's in place, I'll turn off the Show Mask option. I can now make my adjustments using Clear View and Micro Contrast to make the trees clearer in this area. I can also increase the colours using the vibrancy and saturation sliders. You may have noticed that as I'm doing this, the equalizer I'm using has three groups of sliders. We have light, colour and detail. This is to help organise the different sliders, making it easier for you to find the one you want. Now that I've made my adjustment to the first control point, I can add additional control points to make other selections. Unlike with the graduated filter, each control point I add becomes part of the same selection or mask. This allows me to build up a selection along the edge of the reservoir until I'm happy. All the control points that I add have the same settings. To keep the adjustments believable, notice that I don't go all the way down to the left with the selection. The trees there are further from the camera, so they should have a lower contrast and saturation in these conditions. Finally, I want to emphasize the fog on top of the hills. I'll do this by adding another graduated filter to select the area. I can then increase the exposure and reduce the contrast and colour. The area is now appearing much more foggy, but I have the feeling that I've created too regular a selection using the gradient. I can use the eraser tool again to fix the selection and make it appear more natural. To check the effect of just this layer, I can use the visibility icon on the layer in the Local Adjustments panel. The only tool that I haven't explained is the Automated Mask. I'll use this to adjust the grass around the centre of the image here. It's become a little bit unbelievable and it's a bit too bright. Notice the brush has an inner and an outer circle. The outer circle shows the area where you're painting over to make a selection. The centre circle represents the area the software uses to select and sample the image, and it creates a selection in the other areas based on what it's sampled. To select the grass properly, I need to first zoom in to that area so I can work more precisely. This helps make sure that I can paint over the grass with just the central area of my brush. If I now increase the exposure, you'll see what the automatic selection's done. Now I can adjust the grass to reduce the contrast and the saturation to make the grass more believable. Using the compare button, you can check the overall effect from all the local adjustments. I'm sure you'll agree that you can create some very believable enhancements by understanding how to use the local adjustments properly. Once you're happy, close the local adjustments. If you decide later that you want to make a change, just click the local adjustment button again. You can then go in and select the adjustment that you want to affect and make changes. If you found this video useful, please share it with others. I'm Robin Whalley, you've been watching Lenscraft. I'll see you next time for another video.